His words were perfect. "A safe place for my grandchildren," he said. So she transferred her entire life savings for the down payment on their first home. The next morning, she saw a photo of him online, grinning next to a new red Ferrari. But her son didn't know the transfer wasn't a gift. It was a formal loan agreement, and he had just breached the contract. So how do you use a single legal document and a team of repo men to take back a $300,000 supercar from your own son? To the mothers who handed over their security, only to see it squandered on a monument to vanity, this story is your final notice. To the sons who cashed the check and forgot who signed it, this is your reckoning. If you believe in the power of a balanced ledger, subscribe to this channel and witness the next audit. Now, tell me in the comments, what was the one gift you gave that was met with the most stunning act of disrespect? Eleanor, a retired history teacher of 67, stood before the teller at the First National Bank, her hands steady as she signed the wire transfer authorization. $300,000, the sum total of a 40-year career, of prudent investments, of a life lived with careful discipline alongside her late husband Robert. This wasn't just money, it was her sanctuary. It was the wall she had built against the fear of a lonely, precarious old age. And now she was handing it all to her only son, Mark, for his first home, for a lawn where her future grandchildren would play. A sacrifice made not with reluctance, but with a full and loving heart. "It's all processed, Mrs. Davis," the young teller said, her voice soft with an unstated awe. Eleanor smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. It was the last time she would feel that kind of peace for a very long time. The first cut was almost imperceptible. 2 days after the transfer, she called Mark, her voice bright with the anticipation of shared joy. "Any news on the house hunt?" she asked. "Oh, you know, Mom." His voice was distant, distracted by the sound of traffic. "Still looking. The market's crazy. We'll let you know when we find the one." A week later, another small slice. During a video call, she saw a sleek new $1,000 espresso machine gleaming on their kitchen counter. When she asked about it, Jessica just laughed it off. "Just a little splurge. Gotta have good coffee for all that house hunting, right?" The words were light, but they landed on Eleanor like small cold stones. Her sanctuary fund was already leaking, not into foundation and framing, but into trivial luxuries. The third cut went deeper. When Eleanor offered to drive out to see a promising listing she'd found online, Jessica's voice turned cool and dismissive. "Honestly, Eleanor, it's better if we handle this ourselves. The real estate agent has it covered. We'll call you when it's time to measure for drapes." Measure for drapes? She, who had just handed over the keys to their future kingdom, was being told to wait outside the castle walls until the decorating phase. She was no longer a partner in their dream. She was a peripheral character, a source of funding whose role in the story had now concluded. The conspiracy wasn't whispered in a dark room. It was posted on social media under a sunny sky for the whole world to see. It came in the form of a text from her friend Carol from book club. The message was just a screenshot from Mark's Instagram page with a single line of text. "I thought you should see this." The picture was professionally glossy. Mark and Jessica, dressed in designer clothes, stood in the driveway of a glass-walled mansion, their arms draped over the hood of a fire-engine red Ferrari. They were laughing, their faces aglow with the kind of triumphant joy reserved for lottery winners. Mark's caption read, "Hard work pays off. Decided to invest in assets that appreciate. The house can wait. #Ferrari Dreams Investment Goals." Eleanor stared at the image, her mind struggling to reconcile the smiling man on the screen with the son she thought she knew. Her life savings, her 40 years of careful planning, her sanctuary against the cold winds of fate. It was all parked in that driveway, a monument not to hard work, but to a breathtaking act of filial betrayal. He hadn't just spent her money, he had desecrated her sacrifice. She didn't cry. She didn't call him. The history teacher in her knew that some events were so seismic they altered the map of the world forever. She simply stood up, walked to her car, and started driving. When she arrived at their house, the one whose mortgage was 2 months behind, they were in the driveway showing off the car to an admiring neighbor. "Mom," Mark called out, his surprise genuine. "What are you doing here? Come see the new ride." She walked slowly towards them, her gaze fixed not on him, but on the car. "It's a beautiful car, Mark, but I thought my money was for a home, a sanctuary for my grandchildren." Jessica was the first to scoff. "Oh, Eleanor, don't be so dramatic." She waved a dismissive hand. "This is an investment. It's an asset. The housing market is a bubble anyway." "Mom, listen." Mark stepped forward, placing a placating hand on her arm. "Plans changed. This was a smarter play. The return on an exotic car like this is much faster than real estate. We'll get the house next year with the profits." "There is no next year," Eleanor said, finally looking him in the eye. "That was everything I had. My retirement, my security. It's gone." For the first time, a flicker of something, perhaps annoyance, perhaps guilt, crossed his face, but was quickly replaced by a familiar defensiveness. "Look," he said, his voice hardening, "you gave us the money. It became our money. How we choose to invest it is our business. If you can't be happy for our success, then maybe you should be a part of it." He said it. He drew the line in the sand, not with a flourish, but with the casual cruelty of a man who had already forgotten the source of his new fortune. He made her a stranger to her own sacrifice.
Eleanor did not storm out. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked at her son, the stranger standing before her, and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Then she turned and walked back to her car, her movements measured and deliberate. The drive home was a blur of traffic and stoplights, her mind a cold, clear space where emotions used to be. The grief would come later. Now was the time for accounting. She did not retreat to a darkened room to weep. She retreated to her sanctuary, the small oak-paneled study where she had graded history papers for 4 decades. A place of facts, of evidence, of cause and effect. Her first call was not to her sister. It was to Nancy Bishop, her closest friend and a retired legal paralegal, whose mind was as sharp as a finely honed scalpel. "Nancy," she said, her voice steady, "I need you to come over. Bring your notary stamp. Mark has made a catastrophic miscalculation." As Nancy listened to the story, her face, a roadmap of a well-lived life, hardened into a mask of cold fury. "He what?" she whispered, her voice laced with a quiet disbelief that mirrored Eleanor's own. "A Ferrari after you gave him everything?" Eleanor simply slid a worn leather ledger across her polished oak desk. "Robert always said, 'Trust in God, but get it in writing.' Before I made the transfer, I had Mark sign this." Nancy opened the ledger. Inside, clipped to the first page, was a single impeccably drafted document. Promissory note and loan agreement. Not a gift receipt, a contract. Every line was clear, every term precise. The funds were explicitly designated for the sole purpose of purchasing residential real estate. And then the clause she had insisted her lawyer include, the one Mark had signed without reading, too giddy with the prospect of free money to notice the details. In the event of a material breach of contract, including the misuse of funds for non-designated purposes, the full principal amount becomes immediately due and payable, secured by any and all assets purchased with said funds. "He didn't just breach the contract, Eleanor," Nancy said, her paralegal's mind immediately grasping the implications. "He handed you the title to his toy." The weapon was not just revealed, it was armed and loaded. She picked up the phone and made her first call. Not to Mark, to a name Nancy had provided, a man known in certain circles as the most efficient and discreet repossession agent in the state. "Mr. Sterling," she said, her voice like ice, "I have a vehicle I need recovered, a 2024 Ferrari SF90. Yes, I have the original bill of sale and a signed legal instrument granting me security interest." Her second call was to the bank's fraud department. She reported the misuse of funds as a violation of their verbal agreement, initiating a paper trail that would corroborate her legal claim. She didn't yell, she didn't accuse, she presented facts, itemized evidence, balanced the ledger. She was no longer a grieving mother. She was an auditor, and a full-scale, devastating audit was now underway. She hung up the phone and looked at Nancy, the first spark of something other than pain in her eyes. It was clarity, pure, cold, and absolute. At that exact moment, her phone buzzed. A text message from Mark, his first contact since she'd left his driveway. "Mom, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Let's talk tomorrow." The first sign of panic, the first tremor from the quiet detonation she had just set off.
The first counterattack was not a phone call, but a public performance. The morning after the Ferrari was unceremoniously towed from his driveway at 3 a.m., Mark and Jessica launched their war for the narrative. They went to the one place where truth is a malleable commodity, the community Facebook group. Jessica posted a photo of herself, tear-streaked and beautifully backlit by the morning sun, her face a mask of wounded innocence. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulative fiction. "Our hearts are broken," it began. "My husband's mother, who we love and always supported, has had a sudden and tragic breakdown. She's become confused and paranoid, making wild accusations. This morning, out of a misguided sense of control, she had our car taken away. We ask for your prayers for her and for our family as we navigate this devastating mental health crisis." Eleanor read the post from the quiet sanctuary of her study, Nancy beside her, a fresh pot of coffee brewing. "A breakdown?" Nancy snorted, her outrage a warm and welcome fire. "That little viper. She's good. She's painting you as a frail, senile old woman to discredit you before you can even present the facts." Eleanor took a slow sip of coffee. "She is good," she agreed. "But she made a critical error. She assumed the battlefield was social media. My battlefield is paperwork." Eleanor's silence was not passive. It was tactical. While the community Facebook group exploded with sympathy for the poor, young couple, she executed a single, precise countermove. Her weapon was not an emotional rebuttal, but an irrefutable piece of evidence. She didn't call the community group moderator. She didn't post denial. She forwarded 2 documents to a single, powerful third party. Sarah Jenkins, the sharpest, most respected real estate attorney in town, and not coincidentally, the woman who ran the local business association and moderated the very Facebook group where Jessica was performing her victimhood. The first document was a scanned copy of the notarized loan agreement with the use of funds clause highlighted in yellow. The second was the bill of sale for the Ferrari, clearly showing it was paid for in cash the day after the loan was funded. She attached a single 9 note. "Sarah, I thought you, as a woman of legal and financial standing, should see the actual facts of the matter. Regards, Eleanor." She didn't ask for help. She didn't plead her case. She presented the evidence to a judge in the court of public opinion who valued contracts over tears. She armed a neutral party with the truth and then stepped back to watch. The power had shifted. It was no longer a grieving mother's word against a concerned daughter-in-law's word. It was now a legal document versus a lie. The narrative war had begun, and Eleanor had just deployed a weapon of mass verification. Now she simply had to wait for the fallout. And she knew, with the certainty of a lifelong historian, that fallout was inevitable.
The first sign that the narrative war had turned decisively in her favor came not as a trumpet blast, but as a quiet, digital deletion. At precisely 9:15 a.m., the day after Eleanor sent her email, Jessica's post about her mother-in-law's tragic breakdown vanished from the community Facebook group. No explanation, no retraction. It was simply gone. Sarah Jenkins, the attorney, had acted. She had not taken sides publicly. She had simply removed the unsubstantiated libel, a quiet, procedural checkmate that spoke volumes. The gauntlet of fools had begun, and the first fool had just been silenced. The second move was a classic gambit of feigned remorse. That afternoon, Mark appeared on her doorstep, holding a bouquet of grocery store carnations that looked as wilted as his contrived expression of sorrow. "Mom," he began, his voice thick with rehearsed sincerity, "we need to talk. This has gone too far. We were wrong. Jessica is a mess. I'm a mess. We'll sell the car. We'll pay you back. Just please stop this." Eleanor remained in the doorway, a calm, unmovable object. "Stop what, Mark?" she asked, her voice neutral. "Stop holding you accountable for your actions? Stop expecting a contract you signed to be honored." He faltered, the flowers drooping in his hand. "It was a mistake. A stupid, arrogant mistake. I see that now." "You see it now because the car is gone and your public story has been erased," she corrected him, her voice still quiet, still factual. "Consequence is a powerful clarifying agent. Go home, Mark. The time for apologies was the day you bought the car. The time for transactions has now begun." She closed the door on his stammered protests, the carnations left on her porch as a sad, cheap monument to a failed manipulation. The final, most depraved gambit was a direct assault on her sanctuary. The next morning, Eleanor woke to find a large, professionally printed "For Sale" sign hammered into her front lawn. And not just any sign. One from a company specializing in distressed properties and quick estate sales. Below the main sign was a smaller one attached. All contents included due to owner's declining health. It was an act of public shaming, a declaration to the entire neighborhood that she was not only incompetent, but also imminently disposable. Jessica's work. It was cruel, and it was meant to be. But they had miscalculated again. They assumed she would be mortified. They didn't realize that for a historian, every artifact tells a story. Eleanor did not tear the sign down. She photographed it from multiple angles, a cold, methodical documentation of their malice. Then she made another call, not to the police, not to her lawyer, to the local newspaper's investigative reporter, a woman named Linda, who had a reputation for sinking her teeth into stories of elder abuse and financial exploitation. "Linda," Eleanor said, "I have a story for you, and I have receipts, every last one." Eleanor and Nancy spent the rest of the day in her study, calmly organizing the ledger, bank statements, the loan agreement, the bill of sale for the Ferrari, the now infamous Facebook post, the photographs of the malicious for sale sign on her lawn. They weren't just fighting a battle anymore. They were meticulously curating a museum exhibit of their downfall. The war was all but won. Now it was just a matter of ensuring the history books were written correctly. The final reckoning was not a shouted confrontation. It was a headline. The Sunday paper ran Linda's story on the front page of the local section. Local teacher's life savings spent on son's Ferrari. A tale of trust, betrayal, and a forgotten contract. The article was a devastatingly precise and factual account of the entire affair. It laid out the timeline, reproduced excerpts from the loan agreement, and included a sidebar from a legal expert on filial responsibility and financial elder abuse. The photo of the malicious for sale sign on Eleanor's lawn was particularly damning. The procedural takedown was complete. It wasn't an accusation. It was a verdict delivered to every doorstep in their community. The villain's collapse came in waves. First, the professional consequences. Mark's employer, a conservative financial firm, accepted his resignation by Monday afternoon. The public shame was a liability they couldn't afford. Jessica, who had built a small business as a lifestyle consultant to the local elite, found her client list evaporated by the end of the week. No one wanted lifestyle advice from a woman who had tried to publicly humiliate her own mother-in-law. Then came the personal fallout. Her son's world had been dismantled, not by her anger, but by his own actions reflected back at him in the unforgiving mirror of public opinion. He was a pariah in the town where he had grown up. They were forced to put their house, the one with the mortgage payments now cripplingly overdue, on the market. Eleanor read the letter once, her face an unreadable mask. Then she performed her final act of severance. She didn't write back. She didn't call. She took the letter, along with the original loan agreement from the leather ledger, and walked to the small fireplace in her living room. She struck a match and watched as the paper, the promises, the betrayals, and the pathetic final plea all curled into black ash. The ledger was balanced. The account was irrevocably closed. She was, at last, free.
6 months later, Eleanor's new sanctuary was not a house, but a small, sun-drenched apartment overlooking the Pacific Ocean. She had sold the old home, the one filled with the ghosts of a life that no longer existed, and moved 3 states away to a small coastal town. The large, empty space was filled not with expensive furniture, but with books, canvases, and the quiet, steady rhythm of her own making. The past was not forgotten, but it had been filed away, a closed chapter in a history book she no longer needed to read. Her found community was not built on obligation, but on shared passions. She volunteered at the local library, leading a weekly history discussion group for other retirees. They talked of empires and revolutions, of causes and consequences, their shared wisdom a quiet and powerful bond. She took up painting, something she hadn't done since she was a girl, and discovered a talent she never knew she had. Her small apartment became a studio, filled with the scent of turpentine and the vibrant colors of her new life. She never heard from Mark again directly. News traveled through Nancy, a filtered, distant echo of a world she had left behind. They had sold the house, downsized to a small rental, and were, by all accounts, learning to live within their means. The lesson had been brutal, but perhaps, in the end, necessary. Eleanor held no bitterness, only a quiet,
detached sadness for the son who had to lose everything to understand the value of anything. Her life was her own now, the books balanced, the future an unwritten page. Her journey proved that the greatest power isn't in enduring disrespect, but in meticulously drafting the invoice for it. If you believe in the power of a balanced ledger, subscribe to this channel and witness the next audit. What was the one small thing someone did that proved their disrespect was intentional?